Hi everyone, how are you today? First off, a big thank you to everyone who has recently subscribed to this channel, and a thank you to the French Whisperer ASMR for featuring my channel in his educational ASMR compilation video. French Whisperer is one of my favorite YouTubers for several years actually, so it was a huge honor to be part of that and to be featured along with so many other talented people. Please do check the video out, and if you like educational and or ASMR content, I'm sure you'll find something there that will help you feel relaxed and focused and learn some new things. In this video, I'm going to be talking about some books that I recently finished, some books I am reading now, and books that I will be reading in the future. So the first one I want to talk about here is a novel called Blindness by Jose Saramago. This is both a book that I read for the country of Portugal, because I've been trying to read a lot of different countries' literature as part of a read-along. And also, this is a pandemic novel, meaning it takes place in this fictional setting where there is an outbreak, in this case, of white blindness. I honestly did not like this book very much at all. I found it very disturbing and not very well written on a couple of levels. I'm not going to go into it in detail in this video, but I did write a review of it on my blog, which you're welcome to check out. There is a content warning, so just a heads up. This is a very, very grim novel, and I really wouldn't recommend it to anyone, both for that reason and also for the caliber of writing, in my humble opinion. Next book I want to talk about is one I would recommend, and it is the Oxford Book of Japanese Short Stories. Now, I mentioned this on a recent video, and I can say that as I've been reading it for a class, I'm quite impressed with both the selection of stories and the translations. So far, I have read, I want to say, probably 4 or 5 stories from this collection. The most recent one I've read is called Sancho the Steward. It's actually the first story. These stories are written by many different Japanese authors and from many time periods, including 19th century and 20th century. And some of these authors are also still living, so it's a great selection of stories, and a couple that I will just mention as ones I would particularly recommend. This one called Merry Christmas by Dazai Osamu. So this story called Merry Christmas was very sad little vignette that takes place after World War II, and it's about this man who comes back to Tokyo and runs into an old family friend. And like most of the stories I've read so far from this collection, it's quite shocking in a way, but it's also very thought-provoking and gives you insights into Japanese history and people's experiences during these really, really difficult times. The other story that I want to recommend, and this is one I read on my own, not for a class. I actually read it as part of a different collection, but it's also present in here, and it's Unzen by Shusaku Endo. And this is, if you've heard of the novel Silence, or maybe watched my video on Silence, you'll remember that it's a historical fiction novel about the persecution of Christian missionaries in Japan. And Unzen is like a companion short story to that novel. It's about a man who goes to Mount Unzen and looks at the places where these horrible tortures were committed against the missionaries and believers. And it's basically, he's just thinking back on that history, and you can almost think that maybe Endo was self-inserting into the story. Anyway, I thought it was really good, and I would recommend it whether or not you end up reading the longer novel. Another book I'd like to show you is this copy of Villette by Charlotte Bronte. So some of us on the website MeWe, which is an alternative social media platform, have been reading Villette. Now, I'll be honest with you, I am actually really behind on the read along. I really overcommitted, and it's kind of why I've been really unable to make videos lately. I've just been so busy with all kinds of things that it's hard to just focus on one. But anyway, I've been reading Villette again for the second time. This is by, as you can see, Charlotte Bronte, the author of Jane Eyre, and this was a novel that really made a huge impression on me when I read it as a teenager. It's about this young woman named Lucy Snowe who goes to teach English at a fictionalized European boarding school. I just think that this book shows a deeper side of Charlotte Bronte than even Jane Eyre. For example, in the whole beginning of the book, she talks about, what it's like to be a woman without a family, a woman who is trying to make her way in the world in the 1800s. And when Charlotte wrote this novel, I believe one or both of her sisters had recently died. So she was grieving the loss of her family while she was writing this, and it was also based in part upon her romantic experiences as a teacher herself in Brussels. So there's a lot to unpack in this novel. I'm hoping to do a full video on it in the future after I finished rereading it. What I'm noticing so far is that there's a lot of foreshadowing that I didn't know the first time I read it. There's also a lot of social commentary on young women in the 19th century, and we get to meet Lucy Snowe, who's such an enigmatic heroine, so flawed and yet so endearing because of how she just keeps going, and she doesn't let her circumstances stop her from trying to be the best she can be. So that's a little intro to Villette, a book that I am enjoying rereading and hope to review fully very soon. I'm going to show you some new books now that I have recently ordered. Yes, I ordered more books. And in fact, I ordered even more books that are coming soon. Long story on that, but just bear with me. First one here is called The Path of Loneliness by Elisabeth Elliot, Finding Your Way Through the Wilderness to God. Elisabeth Elliot is a well-known Christian missionary, and I'm just sort of recently getting into books on self-help and religion, Christianity specifically. So I just started this, and I'm liking it so far. It's very readable and approachable. It's kind of a heavy topic, but I'm kind of interested to see where she goes with it. This first part of the book, I think, is somewhat autobiographical, and there is some advice, but I think there's going to be more that she gets into as the book progresses. Another book I want to show you, and this one is just so aesthetically pleasing. It's Virginia Woolf, The Waves. And this particular edition is a Vintage Classics edition, but it's a little different than some of their other ones. It's got, I guess you could call it a cardstock cover, and it has these, I don't know what you call those. Anyway, you get the idea. Yeah, it's almost a pocket-sized book, and you know how much I like pocket-sized books. So I'll be reading this soon, or sometime this year, I think. I have never read a novel by Virginia Woolf. I have read The Death of a Moth, I think it's called, an essay, and also A Room of One's Own, which I would highly recommend, even if you're not, regardless of whether you consider yourself a feminist or not. I thought it was a really good book, and just lots of good history and commentary in it. Next one up is called The Gate, another Japanese novel, this one by Natsume Soseki. Not sure if I said that quite right. This is a family drama. It says a humble clerk and his loving wife scrape out a quiet existence on the margins of Tokyo, resigned following years of exile and misfortune to the bitter consequences of having married without their family's consent, and unable to have children of their own. Sosuke and Oyone find the delicate equilibrium of their household upset by a new obligation to meet the educational expenses of Sosuke's brash younger brother. Yeah, there's a lot more to it than that too, but you get the premise of this novel. I have pretty high hopes for this. Last but not least, a book that was recommended to me a few years ago. Not personally, but like I read a review of it and I knew this was a book I should read, and it's called East of Eden by John Steinbeck. Again, never read anything by Steinbeck. Am familiar with sort of the themes of his books from film or just pop culture. But this beautiful orange penguin edition is one that I'm hoping to read this year. I don't know because it's pretty long. But I am certainly looking forward to East of Eden. It is also a family drama that I believe takes place in, I think it takes place in California. Follows the intertwined destinies of two families, the Trasks and the Hamiltons, whose generations helplessly reenact the fall of Adam and Eve and the poisonous rivalry of Cain and Abel. Well, you know how much I like biblical allegories or retellings and things of that nature, so I have also high hopes for this novel, and that would also make a good video in the future. I'm really getting into something longer and more in-depth, so yeah, that's all I had for this video. Sorry I have not been able to do weekly videos recently. I've just had a lot on my plate, and yet I do want to continue making videos, but I want to make sure that I'm not getting burned out or like overdoing it. So thank you so much for watching. Please like the video if you enjoyed it, and have a great rest of the week.